there are some interesting characteristics about mother love. And already we've witnessed a few of what they are. Some of them are a love and a gentleness and a grace that dissolves every obstacle and causes seeming adversaries to dissolve as well. And there's another piece of mother love that can be defensive and protective when that is what is called for. It's very interesting that what we focus on and what we study here is this path of non-resistance, this path of clear believing, no matter what, regardless of appearances. We attempt to understand and utilize this power that aligns, that realigns, that reveals alignment, that harmonizes by its very nature. And so those are some of the qualities of mother love. On Mother's Day, we have a number of occasions to celebrate. And what Aggie just read is actually the history of how this holiday came to be. It truly is. It started out as a request that was granted for women to assemble on purpose in the name of peace. It has become many other things, as do many holidays. And some of them may have very little to do with the original root, and others have quite a bit to do with it. But what an interesting history lesson, and what a moment that is to honor this point of origin for this holiday. And again, what we do here is we really focus on every embodiment and expression of life energy that is in alignment with the original harmony of all life, that is constructive. And so it's a very fine line to walk sometimes when we're recognizing that some of the ways we have expressed ourselves and some of the ways that we have embodied what we thought was right and necessary may in fact have been inharmonious, may in fact have been destructive. So we can look to the original idea, to the purest concept, and elevate, lift those ideas until we reach that place where they are affirmative, where they are harmonizing, which means recognizing the harmony that already exists in all life, within each of us, and therefore between us, regardless of what's showing up on the outside. And so it's more in the spirit of that we get together. I do a workshop about once a year, and I'm going to be doing it again sometime in the fall. It's called Spiritual Activism. And it's about how to respond to that urge to make things right in the world without adding to destruction or disharmony. And there's a way to do it. And mothers know a lot about that. So we're honoring our mothers. We're honoring the mothers among us. We're honoring those who have mothered us who may not have been our biological moms. We're honoring grandmothers and aunts, older sisters, cousins, teachers. We're honoring foster parents. We're honoring whoever has stepped into that role. Maybe it even looked like it wasn't a choice, but on some level it was. To embody and to express that mother love, and to experience what it felt like to be the expression of that mother love. There are 4 qualities that I sort of isolated about mother love today that I wanted to share with you. One of them is that mothers create. a mother of any species, life form, human, plant, or otherwise, creates. And we're really all, again, hearkening back to what we do in this philosophy, in this teaching, we recognize that we're part of the creative process forever continuing to unfold. So number one is that mothers create. Number two is that mothers nurture. Number three is that mothers protect. And number four is that mothers teach, they educate. So there's some really fun examples of that. And one of them has come to mind lately. This woman who's a friend of mine, she said, you know, I've been watching the birds outside my window lately, and gosh, are they busy. You know, a few weeks ago, they were very busy making nests, right? And certainly right before that, or perhaps at the same time, they're doing all of this funny mating ritual stuff. But it's spring. So it's time. It's instinctively known as the time to have a family. Find a place for that nest. And go ahead and gather the materials with which to build it. And you know, some of them are going and fetching pieces of straw and flying across. Or big sticks, you know, the osprey, they're flying with big sticks. Some of them are gathering up little pieces of hair and grass, right? Others are burrowing into trees, old dead trees. There was a woodpecker that I kept seeing every time I was into Quest on a Monday or something that was trying to make a hole in the telephone pole. I don't know if that ever worked, but it made a really neat sound. So there's a lot of this activity going on. There's this instinctive drive to create. And by the way, in the bird kingdom, all of the guys are way better looking. So, and maybe those of you in the room would say that's true of humans also. I don't know. But they've got the fancy plumes, you know, the best outfits and all that. So there's this whole thing about creating. Then, and that involves, of course, coming together, finding a good place to have a home, and then building it, and then starting that family. And then there's nurturing. Nurturing is next. Sit on the eggs. Keep them warm. Protect. You know, the truth is, this isn't just up to the mom. This is a family affair. But sit on the eggs and keep them warm. Maybe they take turns doing that. To every species is a little different. But then there's the going to get food, of course. How many of you, I haven't done this. There are other creatures in the animal kingdom who chew their food for their young and then give it to them. I think that there are some primates that do that too. You know, here, let me help you. You know. So, we have, and then with the birds, you know, some of them have that little spot on their beak, and the baby just pecks on it, and that means, you know, feed me. So anyway, there's this wonderful ritual around nurturing, you know, and for us, it's very similar, because there needs to be some way after this choice has been made and this vessel has been created and a shelter has been provided for that nourishment to keep coming. Because now we're in the process of this life going from an idea to a full-fledged reality able to live on its own. So that time in between is about nurturing and feeding that. Now recognize that it's actually the same for those of us who are perhaps finding a place to live and turning those bare walls into a real home. That's nesting. That is a creative process. It involves hunting even and gathering. It involves all of those things. And at some point through those efforts that are sort of instinctive, those four walls become a sacred place to come home to. And to do our own nurturing and development. So the next one's a lot of fun. Protection. I've met a lot of people throughout my life and been through many teaching modalities, and somebody in one of them I think that she did this just in the hallway when we were on our way to a class, and she was an intuitive. And I told her when my birthday was or something, and she said, "You are fiercely creative." And I thought, oh, I think she's right. And I wondered if that would explain the way I behave when I have created something, and I want to make sure that it lives. You know, watch out. My friend who was talking about the nesting birds, she said that these birds nested right near their front door, and for that period of time between when the nest was built and those eggs were still, you know, in incubation, all the way till the little baby birds were flying on their own, it wasn't their front door anymore. And they had to watch out. I mean, they would squawk and squeal and flutter, but they really had to be careful when they came in with the groceries not to get their eyes pecked out. And I recognize that this protective thing is sometimes how I am when I am in love with a creative process. I'm in it. I've become it. And we're on our way. Look out. So I decided, well, so maybe that's not so bad after all. And I can temper it. I can use my words. Been to a lot of classes about that too. I know how to use my words. I have chosen to learn a vocabulary that allows me to say without hurting anyone that I'm really involved in something that I care about. And that way, you know, no one has to get their eyes poked out. Right? So you think about it, this concept of protection. Okay, it applies to the family of birds. It's recommended that you don't go kayaking in the swamp at a certain, or canoeing a certain time of year when baby alligators are at their most vulnerable. Because mama, she means business, you know? Otherwise, don't worry about it. But if you go when the babies are small and they haven't learned to fend for themselves yet, and you bring a little dog, forget it. Your dog is toast. Breakfast. So there's a natural order of things. And there's a certain element to this protection that is necessary between when a life is conceived of and when it is fully grown. That's built in to every creative process. So it's a funny thing, and it's necessary. So the next thing is teaching. The next part is teaching. You think about it. Between every phase of development, there's always this point where it kind of nears the end. Unless it's like graduation. School's going to be out in 5 minutes. Yay! But at the end of every cycle, when we've gotten really comfortable and it's so familiar and warm and fuzzy and wonderful, and we want it to go on forever, there comes that point where we have the opportunity by some loving person to be taught about what's next and to be invited to let go of what is. I know I've mentioned this before, but Dr. Christiane Northrup talks about when it's time for a baby to be born, the cafeteria shuts down. And this cafeteria in the womb no longer feeds the baby because it's time for that child to be born into the next chapter, the next life, the next iteration. And so the cafeteria shuts down. Damn, now my card won't work, That's not working anymore. And everything else starts to be kind of funky. And there's this feeling that's described as the quickening. I'm really glad. I have been through a rebirthing process, but I'm glad that I don't have a distinct memory of what that was like. I have little bits that I've done in like a therapeutic regression that were terrifying, So there's this point between every cycle where we get to let go of something. And we get to be taught what's next. So on the instinctive, non-verbal, no words required level, that's happening. Then it also happens with words and gestures and activities and agreements and changes. When you were a little kid and someone read you a story, and you just wanted them to go right back to the beginning and do it again, read it again, read it again. Maybe you've read to someone, and they've said, read it again, read it again. And at some point you have to say, no, it's time to go to bed now. You know, that's an example of that ending. And you begin to educate about the value of sleep. Sweet dreams, restoration, waking up for a brand new day with lots of energy, ready to go, to discover what's next. Sometimes it's not quite so sweet. I don't know if you've ever heard the sound. I lived near a cattle farm in North Carolina at one point, and there was this point in the spring when the calves were weaned, and they would cry and cry. And I'm like, oh, I want to just run down there and reunite them, you know? This concept of weaning is a good example. How about learning to fly? That's a beautiful one. You know, in nature, there are some birds that realize it's just time to go teeter on the edge of the nest and give it a shot, and they don't know what they're doing, but they just do it, and they, you know, and they flap and they learn to fly. And there are others that need a little nudge. Mom is happy to offer that little push. I have friends, male and female alike. I've described an employer in here before who always used to invite me to do things I didn't think I could do. And I resented that, but I was also grateful for it. Not quite in the same breath, because I had that moment of terror. You're asking me to do something really important about which I feel very incompetent. For example, a 130-foot yacht, you know, docking stern to in the med and having to use, I don't know, chains and anchors and ropes all at the right time and the right angle and the right measure, and if you get it wrong, boom, you know. And I always had to say on the radio how far away we were from that, you know. But every time I've been asked to do something that I didn't think I could do, that was a push out of the nest. You may have done this when you signed on the dotted line, perhaps for a business loan or mortgage, perhaps for the articles of incorporation. Have you ever done that? And my commitment to do that was right. It was on the edge or over the edge of my comfort zone. But there was something I wanted so much on the other side. And I heard that voice saying, you can do it. That in that moment of insane clarity and total belief, I signed on the dotted line. And then something different from mother love, honor, well, I don't know, but I think of that as one of my Scottish masculine traits. But anyway, my honor is part of what made me keep that agreement in times when I would have loved to just run away. And that voice that says, yes, you can. There's this thing about a mother, the divine feminine that doesn't give up. I remember I had this cat who adopted me, first of all. She just waltzed down my railing and said, hi, you know, will you be my family? And she didn't take no for an answer, and I started feeding her. And then she got really big. And then she got really skinny, and then she brought all her kittens inside, you know. And for that space where I didn't see her for 2 or 3 days, she was giving birth and nurturing all of those kittens and not eating herself. She was putting up with pain and hunger until they were secure, you know. She's like, here's the deal. I'm going to move them into that house, then I'm going to go get something to eat, and we'll be fine. So there's a perseverance. So there are lots of qualities, but if you think about it, a mother and the divine feminine in all of us creates something. We get a wild idea to do a project. We decide we're going to remodel the porch or the bedroom or the bathroom or the kitchen or the whole place. We decide that we're going to start a program in our community. We say, that's it. I want to make a difference in the whole wide world. And so we set something in motion. And then we nurture it. We nurture it at Home Depot. We nurture it by doing research online. We nurture it by telling our friends about it. We nurture it by marketing it, advertising it. We nurture it by having fundraisers. We nurture it in some way. And sometimes we protect it. And if we're not careful, we may, save the life and alienate everyone else. We have the opportunity, because we get to do that consciously, to do that in such a way that honors all other lives at the same time. Sort of like, no offense, but I'm really taking care of this. I really believe in it and I love it. And I bet you have something in you too that you believe in and love. Another thing that a mother does in nature is adopt others young. Not even the same species. We see it all the time with the cute pictures on the internet. So you may recognize and resonate with something that is being created that you believe in too, and say, I want to help that thing become a reality. I want to help that thing grow. I want to help it to be strong. I want to help it to live on. I want to help it to make a difference. That's what we're doing right here. That's what we've been doing now for almost 2 years. I can't believe that. So those qualities, to create, to nurture, to protect, and to teach, are in every one of us. And we give thanks today because the reason we know anything about them is because somebody created us. And somebody nurtured us. And somebody protected us. And somebody taught us. And even if, and this is what we believe, all of those qualities and potentialities existed in each and every one of us, as with everything else in nature, an invitation, a trigger, some sort of stimulation is required for that potential to come out and to be expressed. So we thank the mothers. We thank the grandmothers. We thank the aunts and the teachers and the sisters. And yes, we thank all of them in male bodies as well, because we know we're all made of a wonderful balanced relationship between those archetypes. That really we're part of a greater whole that isn't whole without all of that. And today we give thanks. Today we give thanks. Thank you, Mother. Thank you, Mother Earth. Thank you, Mother Nature. Thank you, Mother God. Thank you, Mother. So we're just going to close this with a prayer today, because that feels like the right way to end this part of our program. And if you'll close your eyes and join me, we'll do this together. I speak my word in grateful recognition of the presence of the divine feminine in all life. That which knows every need and desire and meets it before it is even identified. That which loves without end, unconditionally, eternally, inexhaustibly. That which provides and offers and gives everything that is necessary for the fulfillment of every dream, every life, every potential. We recognize that we are one with it, made by it, in its image and likeness. And therefore, every dream we have, every need we have, every desire we can know is already known and fulfilled, supplied for, and fully supported. That every bit of guidance and love and sustenance is always present, and more than enough energy for every new day for the realization of these dreams. So we give thanks. We let this go knowing that it is already so, and accept this gift. And together, as we open our eyes, we say, and so it is.